What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and to kick off my brand new series of Studio Ghibli reviews, I'm here to let you know that Castle in the Sky is no perfect movie. And Castle in the Sky is about a young girl named Shida who comes across a boy about her age named Patsu. And the two of them have one thing in common. They each have a connection towards this mysterious, supposedly mythical floating island called Laputa, which is said to have so many valuable riches and extremely powerful weapons. And because Shida has a way to actually locate this island, the two of them are being chased by a couple different groups of people who each have selfish reasons for locating the island. A greedy group of air pirates called the Dola Gang, led by their mother, Captain Dola, and a military commander named Muska, who has an entire militia in his hands who would hurt anyone to find this island. And this movie kicks off with a bang with probably one of my favorite openings to any movie. This action sequence where the Dola gang is raiding Colonel Muska's blimp in order to take Sheeta hostage. And what's so great about this sequence is everything is a mystery. You have no idea who these two evil groups of people are. You don't know who this kid is, if she has any family, what significance she has to these groups. And that's what makes it so interesting. The build-up, the execution, the incredibly suspenseful finale of the intro where, without spoiling anything, Sheeta actually manages to escape from both of these groups in such an incredibly dangerous but surprising way. And that's what makes Castle in the Sky one of my favorite Studio Ghibli movies. Its pacing and its animation. Even though Castle in the Sky is 2 hours long, it actually moves at a brisk pace that feels as if it were an hour and a half. And I think it's because after each action sequence happens, the scene transitions to a brand new location so that you can soak in how beautiful, massive, and brightly colorful each setting is without it ever feeling boring or repetitive. And that pacing really helps with the action sequences too, because whenever someone is flying in the air, it is breathtaking to look at. Some of the best moments are these airplane tracking shots filmed in a medium camera angle so that you can feel the weight of the aircraft and feel like you're flying alongside with these characters. And not only that, the animation moves at such a brisk, fast pace with so many added elements like gusts of wind, these bright blue skies, and lush white clouds that make flying in the air so riveting from start to finish. And I also love the way Captain Dola's airships are actually kind of designed and operated like animals. They have these jets that are shaped like dragonflies that have wings and propellers that actually work like a dragonfly. And if you put all four of them together, they can form the shape of a caterpillar. It's really imaginative stuff. And even the combat sequences on the ground feel an equal blend of cheesiness, grittiness, but also a level of pacifism to it. Because even though this might be one of the Ghibli movies with the biggest kill count, the Dola Gang in particular used a lot of non-lethal weapons like gas grenades in order to take out as many opponents in one foul swoop while also keeping the body count to a minimum. And what's also great about this movie is that the characters themselves are all so likable that whenever they're in danger, you actually root for them. You feel scared for them because there's a good chance that they might not actually make it out alive. Patsu and Shida in particular are so likable and mature beyond their years, especially over the coming of age story that they go on over the course of the film. Patsu is an orphaned engineer's apprentice whose late father was discredited for supposedly finding Laputa. So there's already a motivation for why he would go to such great lengths in order to discover this island, not for the sake of money, but just to restore his father's pride. But nevertheless, even though it sounds like a selfish motivation, he is a kind and brave person who would do just about anything for his friends. He uses his wits all the time regarding his knowledge of flying and engineering to escape situations, but he's also incredibly fearless, and he learns from Shida, who is incredibly pacifist to the point where she would put anyone's life over her own, even her own enemies, especially during this one action sequence where a robot is supposedly following her command but is destroying so many people's lives, and she tries to actually stand in its way to make sure that it doesn't kill anyone else. And Shida's an interesting character because there's so many Studio Ghibli female protagonists who are like outspoken badass heroes who would do anything physical in order to get the point across. Shida's more of a damsel in distress, but because of her young age and her pacifist beliefs, it makes a ton of sense. And what was interesting about her is that she's not a pacifist from the get-go. If anything, in the opening sequence that I talked about, she's willing to hit people over the head with a glass bottle if it means escaping with her life and making sure that this information and weapon doesn't get into the wrong hands. It isn't until she starts using this one thing that can help her find Laputa, this enchanted necklace that supposedly comes with some spells, and when she indirectly uses one spell hoping that maybe something good will come out of it, even though she's expecting nothing to happen, that's what makes this robot come to life, and she becomes so horrified. She feels responsible for the acts of carnage that soon follow, and you understand why she feels so guilty and begins to suddenly regret wanting to find Laputa in the first place. And she's very open with Patsu about, if we find this island, this could cause more harm than good. But Patsu also points out, if you got rid of this one device that could help us find Laputa, we wouldn't have met. We wouldn't have gone on such an exhilarating journey. We wouldn't have found each other. So the movie makes it very clear that there are as many strengths as there are weaknesses to opening the gates to something so revolutionary and exciting, but also incredibly dangerous and harmful. Now, as for the villains themselves actually are portrayed a lot better in the Disney dub, because you have Cloris Leachman as Captain Dola, who is so funny with this grovelly, high-pitched, over-the-top angry voice that makes her seem so intelligent and badass whenever she's in combat, but also has this dry, sarcastic wit when she's making fun of her children's stupidity in regards to following orders. And Mark Hamill as Colonel Muska. This is by no means a complex, interesting, or even thoughtful villain, but because Mark Hamill has such a career in voiceover work playing villains, you know for a fact that he's going to have this deliciously sinister, over-the-top voice that sounds so mysterious when he's soft-spoken, but when he's loud and upfront, he's ruthless, he is despicable, he's willing to kill kids. In fact, there are some sequences where he actually grazes one kid's cheek with a bullet. It was such a huge surprise the first time around. But the most interesting thing about him is how calculating he is in such a short amount of time. Like when he does capture Patsu and Shida for the first time, and not the last time because it's a Studio Ghibli movie and they're kids, he knows for a fact that killing Patsu would serve no real purpose. So his first method of pressuring Shida into giving him the weapon is by pointing out, like, I can keep you alive and I can keep Patsu alive, but it's either one or the other, so what's it going to be? And that was a really smart move. He could have pointed a gun at Patsu, he could have threatened to kill him, and then would have by breaking a promise to her, which usually they do it just for show and it doesn't make sense, but the whole idea of keeping Patsu alive and even letting him go at one point, because they know for a fact that Patsu is just a kid who has no one in his life that can provide an airship, it seems like such a smart idea. Now, that's the Disney dub, because that was the first video I watched before I made this review, and not gonna lie, I was pretty disappointed because of how preachy the translation was and how kind of awful the dubbing was. Don't get me wrong, Cloris Leachman and Mark Hamill were in top form, but the actors who played Shida and Patsu in the Disney version were James Van Der Beek and Anna Paquin. And as many people have pointed out, James Van Der Beek was way too old to be Patsu. If I'm being honest, if you listen to him, you don't even know it's him. You think it's Matthew Broderick in his 30s in a 13-year-old's body, and after a while, you do kind of get used to his voice coming out of that body. What you don't get used to is how often he shouts. I'm not saying how loud he shouts, I'm saying how often, because it is a great deal, and it really got on my nerves. And in regards to Anna Paquin, her voice does match the design to an extent, but she kept switching from her natural New Zealand accent to her American, often in the exact same sentence, and it really felt distracting. So I knew for a fact if I wanted to review the movie itself fairly, I had to watch the Japanese version before filming this review. And I'm happy to say the Japanese version is a lot more subtle, not just in regards to the character development. There are no random sentences where there's just like, I lived with my parents, we were so happy, but then they were all taken by a plague. If anything, there are actually a lot more sequences where characters start off mid-sentence and then it'll flash back to a sequence that is told purely through the visuals and the music. In fact, there are so many reaction shots that are just told with the characters' expressions or behind their back as they're observing another situation in order to make you wondering, oh my god, this is intense. What are these characters thinking? What are they going to do next? There's more of an element of surprise in regards to the voice acting in the Japanese version. And I think it goes without saying, in the Japanese one, they actually did sound like 13-year-old kids, and it made their mature beyond their years personalities feel a lot more impactful. And whenever they're in danger and whenever they have to use their wits and their strengths equally to get out of trouble, it's a lot more of a surprise seeing a 13-year-old kid who actually sounds like a 13-year-old kid using a rocket launcher, not to shoot people, but to get through buildings in order to escape from danger. It just really comes off as more of a surprise. It's more intense seeing and hearing actual kids in trouble as opposed to 20 to 30-year-olds inside of a 10-year-old's body. Plus, the 30-year-old thing in a 10-year-old body, it doesn't really make that much sense because the whole mature beyond their years personalities doesn't come as a surprise because they already sound mature. So that's my little rant on the Disney version. If you want to see Castle in the Sky and really enjoy it, do check out the Japanese version. Now, if I had one complaint that's from the Japanese and Disney version, it's regarding this one subplot where Patsu and Shida have to make an alliance with a group of men, and this group of men were told earlier by a friend of theirs that if you want to marry a woman, marry a girl like Shida, and they take that so incredibly seriously that they become emotionally and kind of physically attached to her, and I have no idea where that came from. Now, don't get me wrong. The scene itself is legitimately funny, and it's there to point out that these people are idiots who read too deep into things. But at the same time, it happens so often, and I just sat there and I kept thinking, how old did you think she was? Like, I don't know if it's a Japanese customs thing, but then again, this movie does come from a studio that legitimately made us believe that 4 and 5-year-olds could fall in love with each other, so I don't really know if it's just the storytelling or if it's a cultural thing. Somebody let me know in the comments below just so I can get that right in future reviews. But outside of that, though, Castle in the Sky is actually one of my favorite Studio Ghibli movies. It has a lot of fun action. It has really well fleshed out and likable characters. The environmental messages aren't as on the nose as movies like Princess Mononoke or Howl's Moving Castle. And I'm going to keep saying this over and over again in future Studio Ghibli reviews, but Hayao Miyazaki's animation is beautiful, massive in scope, bright, colorful. Joe Hisashi's score is magnificent. This might actually be my favorite Joe Hisashi score. I love especially the use of symphonic music mixed with this soft melody that comes from the piano whenever characters are just sitting back and observing nature. It complements the visuals so nicely. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give Castle in the Sky a 4 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Castle in the Sky, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to stay tuned for more Studio Ghibli reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.